ahead. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Tony Katz, and there are no tariffs. Good to be with you. Just grabbed the Melanio right there. That's the Maduro. I didn't grab the Maduro? I did not grab the Maduro right there. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to smoke it. And, of course, my very fancy Opus X Society cutter. That is a beaut. Admittedly, that's a beaut right there. And I don't know, what was I working on that my fingernail was just... Not having clean fingernails, that's a thing. That's a thing. Anyway, we have a lot to get to. I'll wash my hands during the break, including tariffs. We have William Jacobson, Cornell law professor, legalinsurrection.com with us today. Big wins for Trump in the Supreme Court. We're talking about the ability to actually do his job when it comes to immigration, and everything brought to you by the good people at Von Reist. Flederman Von Reist. These are your watch people. Look at that. The Einheits right there in the blue. Oh, it's a beauty. Get yours at vonreist.com, R-I-E-S-T-E, vonreist.com. Use promo code CATS and get your discount. Let's start a show. China is going to fight Trump to the very end. Okay. You do that. You fight Trump to the very end. You knock yourself out with that, and I wish you all the best. And when I say I wish you all the best, I hope every member of the Communist Party simply disappears tomorrow. What? Well, we're all better off without communists. I mean, honestly, when it comes to communists, you realize that maybe Thanos had an idea. China's better off without the communists. Everyone's better off without the communists. Tony Katz, that is me, by the way. Tony Katz today. Oh, the United States is going to add more tariffs to us. We'll add more tariffs to them, and we'll fight them to the very end. Listen, if that's the way you want to go about it, that's fine. You have to understand that Trump does not care. And the ideological MAGAville doesn't care. You don't care about your citizens, China. That much is true. And your argument is you can apply more pressure to us because we have more effect on our elected officials than we can have on you, because if those people complain, you'll simply make them disappear. Just like you did to Jack Ma, just like you did to that tennis player, just like you repeatedly do anytime anybody should cross you. What's the matter with me thinking that you should disappear? Nothing, of course. It would be better if you just weren't communists. It would be better if you didn't subjugate your people. It would be better if Hong Kongers could speak freely and live freely. It would all be better. It would be better if you didn't manipulate the dollar. It would be better if you didn't manipulate the yuan. All these things would be better. It would be better if I didn't stutter when I said the word manipulate. And here we are. The idea that you're now going to engage in the threat, Trump was, if anything, ready for that. And that kind of talk is what I think more motivates the MAGAville faithful. All this over tariffs. And the tariffs, of course, are about trade deficits, which at least more people are talking about now. So much so that it seems that Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, took a trip down to Mar-a-Lago over the weekend to say quite clearly to President Trump, make this about trade deals. If you make this about tariffs, you're just going to get destroyed. You're going to get the crap kicked out of you. Make it about the trade deals. The president seems to have taken them to heart, because it is within the deals that we'll find out whether or not there's a deal. Now, I could spend my time listening to the Chinese Communist Party talking about pressure.
Blackmail are not the right ways to engage with China. If the U.S. disregards the interests of both countries and the international community, insists on launching a tariff or trade war, China will fight to the end.
Okay. Yeah, that's of course what they're going to say. Now, we can listen to this finance minister spokesperson, or we can listen to Anthony Scaramucci talk about these policies.
Well, it's not a winning strategy for Americans because of the shock waves that he's causing. I mean, this is really just President Trump and his attention-getting addiction. You're breaching the trust of our allies. You're breaching the trust of our trading partners. So if they declare victory after this and say, well, this was a good idea, it clearly wasn't. A better idea would have been to go to our trading partners and allies diplomatically and say, okay, here are the living standards in America. Here is the disposable income in terms of real purchasing power that's down for the average American working class family. I've got to get it back up. And also, of course, that's good for you as my trading partner because Americans are consumers. He could have done it more diplomatically. He could have done something that Ronald Reagan did in the 1980s. He could have had a zero policy. Remember when Reagan had the zero option for the Pershing missiles? He could have said, listen, for the next 3 months, I'm going to zero tariffs on everybody around the world, and I'm expecting them to join me on that. There were so many different ways he could have handled this more deftly, more politically astute, but it wouldn't have gotten him the attention that he wanted. He's very excited about all of us talking about him. He's very excited about setting Wall Street bankers' hair on fire, all that sort of nonsense. So no, even if he gets...
He does love attention, Scaramucci. What are the odds that the tariffs last longer than Scaramucci's time as the communications director? Are there odds on that? That'd be I'd love to know. Absolutely, he could have done this 100 different ways. There's nothing new about that. But CNN doesn't put him on because he has an insight. They put him on because he's going to say something where I hate Trump.
A negotiation stance with some of these trading partners. He's leaving them with sore feelings. And just take a look at the bond market, Pamela. You know, at 420 in the bond market, even when the markets were crashing, the 10-year never went really below 4%. A lot of our trading partners are dumping our treasuries now as a sign of lost confidence in the trust in America. So the stuff that he's doing is nonsensical. And even if he gets some wins here, he's like an arsonist, sets fire to the house and then runs outside with the hose, puts it out of fires, and then declares victory. So it's nonsensical stuff. And
there it is. Why CNN put him on in the first place, to call him an arsonist. You know, I'm not down with this stuff. You know, I think that this is all just, it doesn't create a value for us at all. I think it creates more problems than it creates good. And I think that in all of these things, the only thing that matters is the deal. The deal is what matters, not the words. So here are all these networks filling their time with total insanity and pablum from people that we don't care about, that provide us no value. You think anybody wants to hear from Anthony Scaramucci? You think they want to hear from McCabe? You think they want to hear from John Brennan? These people don't provide an insight. They don't provide a thought. You just got to fill the time, and they don't know what's going to happen either. Right now, the Dow is up. It's been up. It's been down today. It had the pre-market was up 1,300. The Dow has been over 1,400. I don't know where it's going to end. Neither does anybody else. Nor does this mean that Trump has achieved victory. Why? The deals. The only thing that matter are the deals. If China wants to get into a fight, China can do it. You go right ahead. The fight doesn't matter. Only the deals matter. We will get into a conversation, as the Wall Street Journal has. Trump turns screws on China, leaves door open to deals with other countries. Like those countries who are dealing with the fact that China is the hegemonic power in the area. We're talking about South Korea, where they have an interim president because they had to drop their old president for wanting martial law. Japan, which is desperate to avoid another round in multiple years of stagflation that damaged that country from the late 80s, early 90s to all the way to about 6 months ago. And Vietnam, which would be very happy to take some of that Chinese manufacturing and learn from them as a communist nation, but nobody actually, all right, they're not the bad communist nation somehow. And you know what? We'll do our manufacturing there because at least it's not China, because you've said that before. And they all have to deal with this power that will eventually swallow them whole. So yeah, making a deal with the United States, why not? All right, Trump called the bluff. All right, Trump said the easy stuff is over. We got to do the more difficult stuff. All right, you roll with the punches. You do the thing. That's fine. There's also reports of nations that are trending towards China because they don't know if they can work with the United States. You really think you can work with China? You really think you can trust the Communist Party? You really think that's going to work out well? These people who steal intellectual property? These people who steal patents and trademarks and all sorts of things? These are not inventors. These are people engaged in theft. That's all they know. No communist ever created anything except for a prayer for a quick and painless death. Never once, never ever. There were 100,000 bajillion ways to do this. And it is true that Trump picked the way that was the most, look at me! That's who he is. I am not a believer that this ends well all the way around. I am equally not a believer that the world is coming to an end. Nor do I believe that this means that China is going to be able to pick up all these players and they're going to be the reserve currency. No. They could have been somebody who was seen as an heir apparent to successor, one slip, one fall, and there's the opportunity. Not as a communist nation. They've had to buy their way into Africa, buy their way into South America, and then exploit those people to a point where no one can avoid it. Trust China and their company Huawei or ZTE to control 5G technology. We've already seen that Europe won't do it, and they've completely pulled away from that idea. You don't let China decide the protocols for 5G. You won't have any privacy at all. None. Communists don't believe in it. Communists are desperate to keep an eye on you. We don't know what the results are yet. And even a good day on the market, which I think everybody would appreciate, doesn't prove anything. Doesn't. The only thing that matters, guys, the only thing that counts are the deals. That's it. What do the deals look like? Not what is the conversation had in the Oval. There's Trump and there's Netanyahu, and Netanyahu's going to talk about, we're going to have zero tariffs. Okay. I don't know how much we were selling to Israel, by the way, outside of military equipment. And I'm happy to have a better deal with them. The question is, when it's said and done, what is actually said and done? What does the deal look like? How many of those are necessary? We asked this question last week, seemingly before anybody else even realized it was the question. How many deals have to be made and with what nations in order to say success, in order for Trump to fulfill the first rule of Trumpism and say Trump wins? I don't know. But I believe what we said here, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong. You were here, is that you're not going to get the deal with China. I believe that's what we said. I believe what we said is you're not going to get the deal with China. That doesn't mean, by the way, that I could be wrong and China could come to a table and some deal could be agreed to as if somehow you're going to trust China. But it's possible. What countries and what deals have to happen for success to be achieved or at least stated? That's what we're looking for. Some people want to discuss that in all of this, that the damage is already done and the trust is gone. No. That is simply not the way anything works. Right? You had this from Joe Crowley, former congressman, Democrat.
What's the response?
Well, I have a new word for you.
What?
Webster's Dictionary. Here it is for the year. Tariffist. President Trump is a tariffist. He's surrounded by tarifists, and he's causing countries and potential retirees to have great terror right now. I also think some of the damage has already been done. The U.S. as a confident trading partner, it's been lost. It's been lost in Australia, of all places. And it goes beyond trade. It goes to security. What we've seen happen with NATO, what we've seen happen with who our friends are, who our friends aren't, everything's been turned.
What is he even squawking about? The Australians, where we're working with them to build ports where we could be launching subs from and possibly building submarines? Is this what he talks about when he talks about Australia? What's happened with NATO? You mean we have forced them into paying for their own security and asked point blank, why in the world is Europe buying energy from Russia and therefore feeding the beast that wants to do them the most level of harm? These people will do anything to confuse. They'll do anything to obfuscate. They'll just pile it on and think it all goes in the same bucket. It doesn't. It does not. We don't know yet the effects. We haven't seen yet the effects. You know why? Nothing's gone into actual action yet. And yet all these people talk with these levels of definitive in the most boring way possible. What we have seen are some reactions, and I'll get into those reactions. No, this is not the way I would have done it. Yes, I do think that there is a harm that comes based on a basic understanding of tariffs and the economy and how we want to have deals that give us the most benefit, and that can include us having a trade deficit with somebody else. But long-term effects? Oh, nobody knows. So let's stop guessing it and let's figure out what's actually going to come. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. These people who think they know everything. And worse, these people who say that you can't question anything. Guys, I have mentioned before. First of all, it's good to have you here. Welcome to the show. I have mentioned before that I voted for President Trump 3 times. It was the better decision each and every time. I don't have a single regret. But if you think that as a radio host, well, you can't say anything bad about Trump, you can't disagree with Trump, because then, honestly, that is such an insult of you as the audience. I can't take it. If there are radio people or so-called influencers out there who won't say something like, I disagree with Trump because they fear of what an audience will say, they're not worth your time. They're not worth your time. There'll be agreements and disagreements, and that's honestly all that has to happen. Let's leave the tariffs behind. Good to be with you. I think I have maybe made a slight error there. I think we have a slight error in our stream. Maybe not. I could be totally wrong. And we will have William Jacobson, Cornell law professor, legalinsurrection.com. And he will be with us in a little bit to talk about the Supreme Court. I will get to that coming up in a little bit. And I also have, where else do I have? Oh, that's right. Just that we were right about the cartels. We were right about the cartels. We were right about being at war. And where was that piece from Ed Morrissey? There it is. There it is, boo-boo. There we go. One minute heard there, producer Landon. Let me get back to you guys. Hey, what is I do not know what that is, Kathleen. There's some giant, I don't know what's happening there. I don't know what that is. I don't know why it's there. Very confused. Very confused by it. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. She is bothered by how cold it is. Maybe that's what this is. This is somebody who's very cold. It's stupid in Indianapolis. It was 20 degrees this morning. It doesn't make any sense. According to weather reports, we might see snow tomorrow. Well, the answer is yes. No, we cannot do anything to prevent it. It is going to happen. Just like you will get an update on Taylor and Travis, it's going to happen. Interesting that we saw our friend Ed Morrissey over there at hotair.com post this story at Hot Air. From NBC News, Trump about to declare war on the Mexican cartels. And the story from NBC is that the Trump administration is considering launching drone strikes on drug cartels in Mexico. Why in the world is this happening? Maybe it's the story over at News Nation. Cartels targeting U.S. firms in Mexico for theft and extortion. Tony Katz today. Great to be with you guys. I want it on the record that we said it before anybody else. We were here. We're at war with Mexico because we're at war with the cartels. And that's Mexico's problem to have to figure out. The cartels said, the United States, are trying to keep us from the human trafficking that makes us so much money and from the drugs that make us so much money. Well, we're going to show you, and we're going to engage more attacks against Border Patrol. We heard this story 2 months ago. I said, okay, we're at war with Mexico. Now the cartels are targeting companies from the U.S. that have plants in Mexico or offices in Mexico. They're engaged in hijacking of trucks, coercing employees into engaging in illicit activities, threats of extortion. Yeah. This is what the people in the racket do. No one's surprised by this. The only surprising thing is, why haven't we punched them in the face? And that's where this story comes to. from NBC about declaring war on the cartels. Correct. Accurate. But you can't just declare it, Mr. President. I want to be clear. You have to hit these people with a level of force they have never witnessed. I said it was a war. We said it was a war. It's because we had an understanding of what we were dealing with. Don't worry. Everybody will eventually come around. It's just going to take them time. This is Tony Katz Today. Guys, welcome back. Good to be with you. Let's test everything with William Jacobson. What's going on, sir?
How are you?
Honestly, I'm fantastic. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. I may be at my most handsome right now. I just want to say that for the record. I was just putting out a tweet saying that you are going to be here. A little post, a little X. I also want to get into, depending on if you're up for it, what happened at Grand Central Station yesterday, but with the takeover there by these Hamas supporters. We've seen you're on a college campus. You're there at Cornell University. Now that the school year is coming to an end, what has the mood been like over the last couple months?
Well, it's been quiet at Cornell, relatively quiet. They're one of the student leaders who's led a lot of the protests and the disruptions was chased by ICE and self-deported. And there were several students who were suspended for disrupting a career day for the encampment. So I think a little bit of enforcement action by the administration went a long way. A little bit of the administration treating them the way any other student would be treated went a long way. So their special privileges were yanked, and things have been relatively quiet.
I'll take relatively quiet. Stay right there. We're going to come back to you in just one moment as we come back to the radio show. That's William Jacobson, Cornell law professor. Legalinsurrection.com. You should immediately head over there. We'll be back to you in just a moment to talk about the Supreme Court and the big wins over there. He'll take a second to have a drink, collect himself. I don't mean a drink. I mean just like a sip of water or something. I don't know. I'm not here to judge for the man. I just like listening to him because he's pretty dang smart. Some big wins for President Trump at the Supreme Court. I only argue why they weren't bigger. And there's a real question as to what it is that Amy Coney Barrett is seeing, what it is that she is doing when you see some of her actions and choices. The Supreme Court ruling in a 5-4 decision to vacate Judge Boasberg's temporary restraining order regarding Tren de Aragua, meaning that, yes, indeed, the President of the United States can utilize the Alien Enemies Act in deportations. Tony Katz today, a pleasure to be with you. William Jacobson joins us right now, Cornell law professor, the mind behind legalinsurrection.com. This is your site, legalinsurrection.com. Supreme Court vacates Judge Boasberg's temporary restraining order. It was a 5-4 decision. What is it that was argued, and what is it that the court ended up saying?
So this is the case of the Venezuelan gang, which was declared subject to the Enemy Aliens Act from the late 1700s, which gives the president pretty sweeping authority to summarily deport people who are enemy aliens here as part of either a declared war or an invasion, and there's another term for it, short of war. And President Trump declared this gang to be a hybrid state actor subject to that act. He then rounded up, I forget the exact number, 200-300, something like that. And 6 of them ran into court in the District of Columbia seeking an injunction, originally release from custody, then an injunction. And that's where everything went afoul, because the original request for a habeas corpus petition is to release somebody from custody, but that clear law has to be brought in the jurisdiction in which they are in custody. And they were not in custody in DC. So the government raised that objection, and the judge pretty much ignored it. The judge simply said that he's going to rule on the merits of it, and proceeded to issue some pretty crazy rulings, including that the airplanes in flight had to turn around, or the airplane in flight had to turn around. Of course, the judge could not have known whether it even had the fuel to make it back. And so it was just one thing after another. There was a second TRO. The judge is now considering holding the feds in contempt for not honoring his order to turn the planes around. And total mess, but it's a mess created by the judge, because when the government said, hey, judge, you have no jurisdiction here, they're in the wrong place, either dismiss this or send it to Texas, the judge should have said, you're right, I'm done here. Instead, he got deeply into the merits, issued some crazy orders, and that's what happened. And it's a case that the Supreme Court had to vacate those, because
let me interrupt for a moment, because you're touching on this thing that for a lot of us, we're not in your world and we don't comprehend it. If this case was filed in this district, DC district, and the people filing it had to know that the people in question were in Texas, why would you file it in the DC district? And this goes to this conversation of judge shopping. Is that what we're seeing here? Is this the way to define it?
Almost certainly it was judge shopping. I'm not sure in this case, but I know in some other cases, they've claimed they thought the person was in a jurisdiction and got moved by ICE unbeknownst to them. So they had kind of a good faith basis for filing here. The case still has to be sent to the other jurisdiction. I don't know in this case whether it was pure bad faith, or for whatever their reason, they thought at the moment they filed this, they might have been in custody in DC, but they weren't in DC. And as soon as that was made clear very early at the start of the case, and the government raised it, this judge should have let go of it. But he seems to be emotionally involved in this case, and even more so now that he thinks they've maybe violated his order, and he should have let it go. And that's the problem we've seen in a small number of jurisdictions. All of these cases, and we have 180 so far. There's a litigation tracker I've seen. I think we've got 180 cases filed against the Trump administration. And overwhelmingly, they're being filed in jurisdictions, in district courts, where there is a very high likelihood of getting either an Obama or a Biden judge. And therefore, they're getting very favorable initial rulings. They're getting crazy rulings. I just saw, although I haven't had a chance to totally read it, the Supreme Court just issued another stay this morning about a case on probationary. I think we're now up to 4, maybe 5 stays by the Supreme Court. And this is something I've been arguing. I may have argued it on your show. Right after this all started back in February, I said, Supreme Court needs to put a stop to this. Okay?
Yeah.
The district court judges are going beyond their jurisdiction. They don't get a chance to turn planes around midair. They don't get a chance to hear cases that belong in another district. They don't get to decide who the government hires, who it fires, etc. They may get to decide that after the fact. I mean, people have rights, and if you're wrongfully terminated, you have a right to file a claim. But you don't have a right to go to a judge and say, Judge, prevent Donald Trump from firing me and 8,000 other people. That's not the role of the courts. And that's been a problem.
Talking to William Jacobson, Cornell law professor, the mind behind legalinsurrection.com. You'd have made that argument here on this show, and our conversations get shared a lot, and I'm thrilled by that. Was this ruling maybe that statement? It's not that Chief Justice Roberts was ever going to make a statement or rebuke like he gave a rebuke of the president, but rather by the ruling, is he sending a message to the lower courts of stop being ridiculous?
I think he's sending a message in these immigration cases for sure, okay, because immigration laws and the habeas corpus release from custody laws are very clear. And the federal courts have very little role in this early on. Even in regular immigration cases, there's a whole immigration quasi-judicial system, administrative judicial system you've got to go to. You don't get to go directly to federal court. You might at the end of the process. And so I think this is a strong rebuke on forum shopping, and it's also a strong rebuke in a slew of immigration cases that are being brought in places they think they'll get friendly judges, because the last place they want to be is Texas or Louisiana federal courts. Okay, they want to be in Massachusetts, they want to be in DC, they want to be in the Southern District of New York. They don't want to be where the law requires them to be, which is Texas for the most part, or Louisiana, because that's where the ICE holding facilities are.
So now let's go to the justices who voted against it. You have Kagan, you have Sotomayor, you have Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Amy Coney Barrett, who has been a disappointment as of late to a whole bunch of people on the political right. But their argument is somehow that the judge had to do this, and it's wrong to think that the government can act. They didn't utilize the word impunity, but that's what I kind of took from their statement. What was the dissent argument about the Alien Enemies Act and the ability of the president to engage the implementation of immigration law?
Yeah, well, to some extent, the dissents were a non sequitur to the actual ruling in the case, the actual issue before the court. They were arguing that these people are entitled. They were arguing basically the merits of it. Okay. And the government has pretty much conceded part of the merits of it. And the part that it has conceded is that even these alien enemies are entitled to some level of due process before they're removed. What that is, people may disagree on, but the government is acknowledging that you should at least have the ability to say, hey, you got the wrong person. I'm not a member of this gang. You may have a presidential order to remove members of this gang, but I'm not one of them. And so they're going to be given some level of due process. They're not going to be given a federal court trial on it, but they'll give some level of due process to contest. And I think most people, if you're fair, would agree that if ICE comes by and picks you up thinking you're a member of a gang and you're not actually a member of the gang, you should be able to get in front of somebody. Maybe it's an administrative law judge. Maybe it's somebody and say, hey, you've got the wrong person. but you're not going to get a full trial. You're not going to get a jury trial. You're not going to get any of those things. And so that's what the dissent was basically saying. And the majority said, hey, that's all irrelevant because the government has conceded that these people will get some level of due process. So the judge is probably patting himself on the back, saying, hey, on the issue of due process, I was right. But the point is, it wasn't his decision. If a judge was going to make the due process decision, it should have been a judge in the appropriate jurisdiction, not in the District of Columbia.
Before I let you go, in and amongst the work that you do at Legal Insurrection, you have kept eyes on and tracked the violence that you have seen on college campuses, whether it be Columbia, NYU, what you have dealt with there at Cornell, which has its own issues. And we saw just yesterday in New York, what I would refer to as Hamas sympathizers, if not terrorist sympathizers as a whole, taking over Grand Central Station in New York and preventing people from leaving and entering, which I do certainly have a question about the idea of false imprisonment. But to a greater moment, they're waving Palestinian flags, screaming and yelling, engaged in chants that one could take as supporting genocide. As a legal matter, you're the city of New York. Where are the arrestable offenses to the extent that you could talk about it? Or maybe to a greater point, we're going to just sit by in society and watch this happen?
The most troubling thing that I saw on the various videos and photos, and I'm not sure I've seen a complete picture, but it appears that they blockaded the exits. And that's a dangerous situation, okay? And that's what you're getting at. There's a lawsuit in Illinois federal court against similar groups. I don't know if it was the same group who blockaded highways. Okay, whether it's false imprisonment, and it's termed various things in various jurisdictions and how much you prohibit someone from moving, but you don't have the right to prevent somebody from leaving Grand Central Station. Okay, so I think, if we were in a different place, maybe that would be prosecuted. It's never going to be prosecuted by Alvin Bragg in New York City, even though they created an extremely dangerous situation. This is something I've been arguing for over a decade, because the use of road blockades has been a tactic of the anti-Israel, anti-American movement, at least for a decade. I remember covering this, out on various bridges in the Bay Area of California, and they just tie themselves up across the roadway. They disable their vehicles on it. You've got people forget going to work, trying to get to the hospital. You've got people trying to go to get medical care. It's a miracle no one's actually, to my knowledge, died from these things.
It's only a matter of time.
These situations.
It's only a matter of time. William Jacobson, Cornell Law Professor, legalinsurrection.com. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. More is coming up. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today. So many angry people. Although I will admit, I do have a subject that I'm pretty bothered by. Did you see this? Speaking of angry, this is Senator Thom Tillis. Check this out right here. I don't know if I can get to it. I don't know where it is. It's a 6-minute video. I do not know where it is in it. I'm going to try and find it right here with you guys, like right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Greer, thank you for being here. Back in the 90s, I was in management consulting, and there was a new platform that came out that promised to transform the business industry, ERP. Some of the early attempts at implementing the system proposed an alla prima approach. Let's do it all at once. Let's change the plumbing out. Let's get it all in, get it done, rip the Band-Aid off. It proved to be hugely unsuccessful. There were a lot of very visible projects, and the industry decided there needed to be a methodical sort of prioritization of what parts of the business needed to perform better sooner, and how do you layer onto that a comprehensive strategy. It looks like we've got a novel approach here in terms of an alla prima approach. I'm not a trade expert, and I'm not going to question it at this point. I do have a question about, at the end of the day, the other thing in management consulting we like to focus on is this concept of one throat to choke. In other words, when you're finally taking a look at a strategy, someone has to own it. And you can't say that it's the president or the vice president. So my first question to you, in this scenario, the decision maker who decided the alla prima approach, who has obviously had to have spent time anticipating what we saw in the markets and some of the pushback, I'm assuming this all got gamed out because it's a novel approach. It needed to be thought out. Whose throat do I get to choke if this proves to be wrong?
Okay. It's a solid setup to a question, right? Basically, it's all takeoff of Harvey Keitel in National Treasure. Somebody's got to go to jail. That is certainly a take. Oh, good gosh. Don't I think that, and I'm curious if people around Trump ask themselves this question. You realize that not everybody can like this. And you realize there are people who are bothered with Trump having nothing to do with tariffs. It has to do with who Kash Patel hired to run the FBI field office in D.C. It has to do with the lack of prosecutions. It has to do with the lack of access to data. There's a lot of questions here. And a lot of people with a lot of angers here. Whose throat do you choke? It's a question, man. White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt scheduled to have a briefing a little bit later. I will bring that to you to the very best of my ability. And then you have the people at MSNBC who have learned nothing. This is a fantastic example, a just terrific example of the near pride they take in not learning. They're desperate to not learn. This is Eddie Glaude over there at MSNBC. And I'm just going to play it for you. You listen.
Grapple with it. Because it's the snake, it's the beast coiled up in the heart, the bosom of the country, as Frederick Douglass said. And the fact that they are doubling down on this, shows you what kind of human beings they actually are.
Say more.
We chose a felon who is more interested in loyalty, who's more interested in retribution, who's more interested in grift than in democracy. And we chose a felon because we didn't want to elect a black woman.
The left is never going to learn, and the left doesn't want to learn. They have no interest in learning why it is Kamala Harris lost. They only have an interest in calling you a racist for not voting for her. And Eddie Glaude fancies himself an intellectual with his Princeton bona fides, etc. They can't accept the fact that Kamala Harris is dumb. She came across as dumb. Tim Walz came across as dumb and effete. It was a coup that took Joe Biden out, and she would change nothing Joe Biden was doing, which wasn't what the country wanted. But racism, sure. I'm Tony Katz. These people, radio show just went to break. These people are never going to learn. They're never, ever, ever going to learn. They don't want to. They have no interest in possibly learning anything. Their interest is solely and exclusively calling you names. They're never going to win. They're never going to win. They're never going to win. Now, Republicans got to work their butts off to ensure that they never win, and they never win, and they never win. You can't trust these people. Not for a second. Not for a second.
What the president of the United States.
Now, this right here
to the American people and
is the House session going on right now.
That promissory note was that he told
we are going to take
on day one
break.
Inflation would go down, prices would go down. On day one, he said. Instead, what the president has done is unleashed an economic chaos.
We're going to take the break. We'll be back to the show in a few.
You know,
I'm going to leave this playing so you can comment on it, and then we'll get to the press secretary.
Like oil shocks.
Sound good?
Over-leveraged financial markets or global pandemics. This new economic disaster isn't caused by war or by an act of nature. It is the result of one man who lied to the American people. His name is Donald J. Trump. With no coherent plan, he's imposing the largest peacetime tax increase in American history. That's what tariffs are. Taxes that will increase the cost of living, your food, the car you need to drive to work, your appliances, and your electronics. All of it will increase what the average family will spend by more than $5,000 a year. And Trump has launched a trade war that has united our allies and our adversaries against us. You know, and I could go on and on about the absurd incompetence underpinning Trump's trade war, the pseudo-emergency used as an authority, the nonsense methodology used to justify the tariff rates, or the ever-changing rationale about the reasons for starting this tariff tantrum. The tariffs are already triggered. They have already triggered a stock market plunge, wiping out trillions of dollars in value. That's the hard saving money for your children's education, for your 401k, for your dreams of retirement. And it's only going to get worse. As prices go up, people will have less money to eat at their local restaurants, see a movie, enjoy a family vacation. That means lower demand, slower growth, job losses in every sector of our economy, from Main Street shops to factory floors.
Gentleman recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
And while Trump may have started this, if this Republican majority chooses to duck a vote on my resolution ending these tariffs, then they will own this too. They will own the higher prices. They will own the jobs lost. They will own the retirement savings erased. They will own all of it. Join us, sign on, stop this tax of American people. This is what should be happening to make us the greatest nation, to continue to be the greatest nation on the planet, and make sure that things are affordable for the American people. Let's join me, therefore, in defeating the previous question and put an end to the self-imposed economic wrecking ball.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair would remind members they are not to engage in personalities toward the president. Gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the reading clerk told us what we were here to do today. In my opening remarks, I read out what it is we're here to do today. We have a rule, and then we're going to have 4 bills to vote on. That's what we're here for. Our Democrat colleagues are desperate. They do not want to talk about this rule and what it does or the underlying bills. They want us to try to look at shiny objects over here, Mr. Speaker, that have nothing to do with what we are here to do today. What Republicans want to do is focus on what we're here to do today. We can talk about tariffs sometime. Yes, we're happy to do that. But let's talk about what we have to do here. The Democrats don't want to talk about these because they correct issues that the Biden administration did wrong, these midnight rules of the CFPB. They don't want to talk about the rogue judges who have been overruled by the Supreme Court. They don't want to talk about what's happening here and now. They want to try to distract the American people with other issues. Mr. Speaker, let's deal with the issues at hand. Let's focus on those, do our job as members of Congress, and get on with our business today. And with that, I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
With all due respect, Mr. Speaker, I talked about all these issues last week. I talked about how I was opposed to the bill that raises bank fees on regular people. I talked about how their bill to make it more difficult for women to vote was a bad idea. I talked about the importance of helping new parents be able to.
Patricia Landon says that Representative McGovern's not like Tom Homan. He's not as cool as Tom Homan.
But we already discussed.
And what legislation makes it tougher for women to vote?
That we're going to actually talk about the tariffs and about the fact that Donald Trump is raising prices on average people in this country. When are we going to have time to do that? I now want to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from New Mexico, Ms. Stansbury.
Gentlewoman from New Mexico is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by saying welcome back to my friends across the aisle. It's really nice to have you back here in the People's House, especially after last week. Your leadership shut down the United States House of Representatives rather than accommodate new moms voting remotely with a newborn child. Stellar work, my friends. You have simultaneously managed to shut down the House and enrage millions of moms across America.
No, millions of moms are not enraged. And sorry, it may upset you, but you have to make choices in life. Tough choices. This was about proxy voting. You give birth, you're allowed to vote from home for 3 months. Proxy voting leads itself down the way to proxy voting on a series of different issues. Now you don't have people showing up for work. And with all due respect, Congresswoman, you're not that special. You have a job to do that you ran for and you knew the rules. Now you want the rules to change for you, and the rules should not change for you. Standards matter. Being in D.C. and voting matters. And if it doesn't matter to you, don't do it. I'm not here to tell you not to have children. I'm here to tell you, like millions of Americans, hard decisions get made on how to raise a child, and it affects how one works. The decision has to be made. You ran for Congress. You made a choice. Then you had a child. Another choice was made. Why isn't the child coming first? It's like, if I miss the votes, I miss the votes. But that Congress has to change for you? I think it's very dangerous stuff. I think it's ugly stuff. I think the way you are presenting this, Representative Stansbury, is obscene and elitist, and I don't know if you're trying to engage. I don't know what you're actually trying to engage in here. At first, like, is she trying to engage in emasculation? And then the follow-up is, I don't know, maybe she's just, snobby and snot-nosed all the time. I'm not sure. I don't know the woman. What I do know is, if you're not willing to honestly address the fact that proxy voting, meaning you don't have to be in the Capitol, right there at the moment to vote, can lead to problems down the road, like proxy to a proxy. Did you actually vote, or did someone vote for you? Are you actually focused on the subject? Can someone get a hold of you and present you with a different point of view that might make you change your mind? The importance of being there. That's the story. And you don't want to engage that? That is some weak sauce. That is some weak sauce right there. So that is the House doing things that they do there in the House. I want to take it to the daily briefing, because that's what we're getting ready for. We're going to see the White House briefing. We're going to see what Karoline Leavitt has to bring. I guarantee you there's going to be some questions about tariffs. I'm no expert or nothing. Wait a second. Maybe I'm a little bit of an expert. There are going to be some tariff questions happening here. But we're coming back to the radio show. If you didn't know, we do a radio show as well. That's how this whole thing starts. Tony Katz today. And I'm wearing, look at that. That is the Einheit from Flederman Von Riest. Von Riest is the watch company. Proud to work with them, being their brand ambassador. Go to Von Riest, RIESTE, vonriest.com. Use promo code CATS. Assembled in Indiana, made in America. Right there, I should say. Assembled in America watch. Oh, it's a beaut. It's a beaut. Go to vonriest.com. Use promo code CATS. Let's do a radio show. White House press briefing. That is what's coming up. Karoline Leavitt will address the press assembled, and we will listen in. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Find everything I do at TonyKatz.com. Live streaming there on the YouTube, Tony Katz, Twitter X, Tony Katz, Facebook, Tony Katz Radio. We are everywhere. My good people, we've been watching the market, and I will tell you that the market has been up 1,400 and now basically, up 4, and who knows where it's going to end. The market is not the economy as a whole. It's not. It never, ever, ever has been. And that people treat it that way is very, very foolish. Like it's the only thing that matters. No. The egg prices matter and the gasoline prices matter. Of course it does. We're fully aware of this. Right now, Wall Street Journal is reporting that people are buying new iPhones, upgrading their iPhones, because they figure if the tariffs come, their phone's going to be much more expensive. I must ask you, is this actually a good idea? I'm due for an upgrade. Should I buy everything right now? So I use a Mac Mini. I am a Mac guy. I know I hate myself too. And then I've got a multiple screen setup. Should I be buying new right now before the tariffs kick in? Are we going to see a price increase tomorrow of $10, $40, whatever the number ends up being? Is it going to happen that quick? Or is it going to happen over time? Is the local Verizon store, are they prepared to have these price increases? And how many more have really gone on sale, have been sold? And you've got the new iPhone coming in September. So now I don't wait. I don't wait for the latest and greatest camera and then the bragging rights that come with having like an iPhone 84, whatever the freaking version is right now. I mean, that's the question. The question is, what move do you make? Are people going to start spending a little bit more to try and take advantage of a deal? I mentioned the gas prices. Oil went below 60 on the West Texas crude. Below $60. $59.94. We'll see. We'll see if that starts making a difference. Meanwhile, Corinne Jean-Pierre, I keep doing that. My mistake. Caroline Levitt has appeared. Let's hear what she has to say.
I have a few announcements off the top today. On April 14th, President Trump will welcome President Bukele of El Salvador for an official working visit here at the White House. They will discuss El Salvador's partnership on using their Supermax prison for Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gang members and how El Salvador's cooperation.
I think it's nice that the president is going to be talking to the warden. By the way, it's only a matter of time before he's called the warden.
On April 17th, President Trump will welcome Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy for an official working visit at the White House as well. The president's thoughts also remain with the families and communities experiencing devastating loss from the severe storms and flooding affected several states across the central U.S. President Trump approved emergency declarations for Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, allowing FEMA to provide federal assistance like equipment and resources to support state and local emergency response officials who are leading this response on the ground. Last night, the Supreme Court delivered a massive legal victory to the Trump administration and allowed us to continue removing foreign terrorist invaders under the Alien Enemies Act. This was a smackdown to a rogue left-wing, low-level district court judge who have relentlessly tried to stop President Trump from using his core constitutional powers as head of the executive branch and as commander-in-chief. The highest court in the land made it clear that the President of the United States has the power to protect our homeland and forcibly remove foreign terrorists who pose a grave threat to families and communities. Thank you to the Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law and protecting the Constitution. Our message to the monster Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists still hiding illegally inside our country is clear. Deport yourself now, or you will be locked up and sent back to your home country. On another matter, the historic Liberation Day announcement last week by President Trump made it very clear that the era of American economic surrender is over. President Trump is no longer going to allow American workers and companies to be ripped off at the hands of foolish trade practices that shipped away millions of high-paying jobs and hollowed out communities across the country. It's America first, all the way. And despite fear-mongering by the media, the world is clearly responding to President Trump's approach. Just yesterday, President Trump held a bilateral meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here at the White House. The Prime Minister pledged to immediately eliminate America's trade deficit with Israel and remove their trade barriers. Israel's proactive approach should serve as a model for the rest of the world. Also yesterday, the president spoke with Japan's prime minister, who wants to negotiate as well. The president also spoke to the acting president of South Korea this morning. He has tasked Secretary Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer to lead these talks. In total, since the Liberation Day announcement, nearly 70 countries have already reached out to the president to begin a negotiation.
That's lovely. Negotiations don't matter. Only the deal does. And that's what we all have to wait for.
Why? Because these countries greatly respect President Trump in the sheer power of the American market. These countries realize they've gotten filthy rich over the past few decades by imposing substantial tariffs on American-made products and ridiculous non-monetary barriers to block out American industry. The jig is up. Past American presidents sat by and let this happen, but President Trump stood up for our country, and he is saying no more. The president's message has been simple and consistent from the beginning. To countries around the world, bring us your best offers, and he will listen. Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits. America does not need other countries as much as other countries need us. Trade deficits. America does not need other countries.
Sorry, that was the feed having a little bit of a glitch right there.
President Trump knows this. He's going to use the leverage of our markets and our country to the advantage of the people he was sworn in to represent. On the other hand, countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership. He is guided by a firm belief that America must be able to produce essential goods for our own people and export them to the rest of the world. A strong America cannot be solely dependent on foreign countries for our food, medicines, and critical minerals. And America must always maintain a robust defense supply chain. Reprioritizing and strengthening our manufacturing industry are essential national and economic security issues of the utmost importance to President Trump. By focusing on supercharging the onshoring of American manufacturing, the president is already delivering on his promise to usher in an economic golden age for our country. Just look at Friday's jobs report, which smashed expectations for the second straight month. The American economy added 228,000 jobs, nearly 100,000 more jobs than economists predicted, and the fourth highest month for private payroll growth in the past 2 years.
All before the tariffs, Caroline Levitt. So I'm not going to tell you not to say, hey, look at this. This is great. I'm going to say that was based on economic policy that you seem to have changed when you went about this tariff for trade deficit conversation. So now we have to see what this new policy brings forward. That's going to be the conversation there. As for the gold cards, yeah, that's pretty dang cool.
President Trump has secured an incredible $5 trillion in total investments already. In the months ahead, President Trump's pro-growth economic agenda will be fully realized. The largest deregulatory effort in American history is underway. Unnecessary, burdensome, costly red tape is being eliminated by this entire federal government every day, driving down costs and massively boosting small businesses.
Good.
So far, President Trump's deregulation effort has already saved Americans more than $180 billion, equivalent to $2,100 per family of 4. The president's drill baby drill energy agenda, which he will discuss later this evening in the East Room, is capitalizing on the abundance of natural resources under our feet to generate more affordable electricity, cheap gas, and quality new jobs. All of this will combine to end the Biden-imposed cost of living crisis that's absolutely crushed American families. Under President Trump, the American energy industry will lead the globe over the next century, delivering lower prices and significantly strengthening our country's economic position. At the president's direction, Republicans in Congress are working quickly to pass one big, beautiful bill, which will also include the largest tax cut in American history. As President Trump has said, the House must pass this budget resolution quickly.
But the Senate version isn't what the House wanted. The amount of Senate cuts is like $4 billion, and you have the Freedom Caucus saying there ain't nothing here. What do you? And now we're going to raise the debt limit. That's where Rand Paul was. This doesn't work. So I would say that President Trump does have a small issue there with his own party, and there have to be assurances given on when the cuts will come. The assurances have to be given.
Caroline, a couple questions for you. The first one being, can you explain the White House's evolution from this is not a negotiation on tariffs to countries should pitch us and start negotiations on
Sure. As the president said yesterday, Jasmine, both things can be true at the same time. And it is a non-negotiable position that the United States has faced a national security and economic crisis because of the unfair trade practices by countries around the world. As for the president, I have maintained this position. The entire administration has always said that President Trump is willing to pick up the phone and talk. And the president met with his trade team this morning, and he directed them to have tailor-made trade deals with each and every country that calls up this administration to strike a deal. And listen, and each and every one of these trade deals should be tailored and unique based on that country's markets, based on that country's exports, the imports here in the United States of America. What makes the most sense for the American worker and for our industry? The president is focused on putting America first.
So was the evolution not factored in or determined by kind of the tumult in the stock market? Was that not a part of the consideration to start making these negotiations and deals?
Again, I would reject that there was an evolution. On day one, we had said that the president will always pick up the phone for other nations and other companies that call this administration. The president always has a listening ear, and it's a non-negotiable fact that America has faced a national security and economic crisis for many decades, and President Trump is just the first to address this.
And then my last question, how will negotiations change how much revenue the White House is planning to make from the tariffs?
Well, that has yet to be seen, but as the president said,
correct,
tariffs which will continue to go in effect as these deals are negotiated.
Correct. Thank you, Caroline Levitt. I'm not a fan of these things, but I want success for the country. We don't know what a deal is until a deal is made. And when you talk about doing different deals with different countries, exactly the point. And by the way, countries that come first will most probably get a better deal than countries that come later. I don't think that's shocking or surprising to anyone, but we don't know what these deals are going to look like yet.
Kevin Hassett say it's going to take a lot for the president to put his signature on the line. So he wants to make sure there's a good deal for America. Is the president operating on any sort of a timeline or deadline where he wants this completed by?
Well, we always move at Trump speed here at the White House, which is incredibly fast. I know you all know that from covering this White House day to day. The president likes to get things done, but he's very much focused on ensuring that these deals are good for the American worker. They are good for American manufacturing. And again, that they tackle these crippling deficits with these countries. All options are on the table for each country. But again, these are going to be tailor-made deals. They are not going to be off-the-rack deals, as the president has called it. And he has directed his entire trade team to be part of this effort. So that includes Secretary Bessent and our National Economic Director, Kevin Hassett. It also includes Secretary Lutnick, Peter Navarro, the entire trade team, Jamieson Greer, who was on the Hill today. Everybody who was involved in this incredible, fair, reciprocal trade agenda will continue to be involved in negotiating these.
First, these are not reciprocal tariffs at all. So stop it with that. But understand what it is that Karoline Leavitt is saying here, something that we've been discussing, and we know this to be true. The first rule of Trumpism is Trump wins. The second rule of Trumpism is that a deal can always be made as long as it adheres to the first rule of Trumpism. So the idea of a win is not predicated on a list of requirements, but rather a result that allows for a presentation. That doesn't mean that the deal will necessarily be bad. But we should be clear that what Karoline Leavitt just said is there is no set of prerequisites. The American worker wins. What does that mean? It means whatever Trump says is a win for the American worker. She admitted as much. We're going to let the press conference continue. I got to take the quick radio break. Keep it here. This is Tony Katz today. Let me bring it back to Karoline Leavitt.
Just saying, be mindful of the whole of government economic approach that this administration is taking every day. Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. You just said that one of the reasons these tariffs are going into effect is that some countries have been ripping off the United States, but some of the tariffs target countries like Madagascar, Bangladesh, with very high levels of poverty. So can you explain how the president wants to correct the deficit with those countries? Is there a plan, for example, to onshore the textile industry that these countries are known because, and, just like, can you be specific about those, like, low income?
Sure. Well, first of all, the reciprocal tariff rates that were implemented by country were focused on the monetary tariff that those countries have imposed on the United States, but also the non-monetary tariff barriers and the regulations, if you will, that have been put into effect over the years, making it harder for America to export to these countries. These were very carefully crafted numbers. There was also a 10% baseline tariff across the board, as well, as you know. Moving forward, the president will talk to any country that picks up the phone to call, and I can tell you the phones have been ringing off the hook, wanting to talk to this administration, this president, and his trade team to try to strike a deal. And it's because the world knows that they need the United States of America. They need our markets. They need our consumer. The president has a lot of leverage on his side because he has the best economy and the best country in the world that he leads, and he knows that. And it's about dang time we finally have a president who uses that economic leverage to benefit American workers. And that's what the president is trying to do. Maggie.
Caroline, thanks. Does the president endorse something that Howard Lutnick said on television this weekend, which was that the army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones, that kind of thing is going to be moving to the U.S.? Is that how the president envisions manufacturing shifting? And if so, how long would that take, roughly?
The president wants to increase manufacturing jobs here in the United States of America, but he's also looking at advanced technologies. He's also looking at AI and emerging fields that are growing around the world that the United States needs to be a leader in as well. So there's an array of diverse jobs, more traditional manufacturing jobs, as you discussed, but also jobs in advanced technologies. The president is looking at all of those. He wants them to come back home.
But iPhones specifically, is that something that he thinks is the kind of technology that can move to the U.S.?
Absolutely. He believes we have the labor, we have the workforce, we have the resources to do it. And as you know, Apple has invested $500 billion here in the United States. So if Apple didn't think the United States could do it, they probably wouldn't have put up that big chunk of change. Elena.
Hi, Caroline. It's clear the president has gotten the world's attention with these tariffs. Is there Is he considering at all potentially holding off on imposing some of them before the deadline, or maybe later, reversing them because he's having these negotiations and having these good talks with other leaders?
The president was asked and answered this yesterday. He said he's not considering an extension or a delay. I spoke to him before this briefing. That was not his mindset. He expects that these tariffs are going to go into effect. And you said something very important, Elena, in your question. You said the president has captivated the attention of the world. Absolutely, he has. And it's about time we have a president in the Oval Office who is putting the world on notice and is putting the American people first. And again, is using the leverage of the United States to negotiate good trade deals.
Now, let me answer this question from Bonnie. Is 0 and 0 the only way? I prefer it that way, right? I prefer free trade. And I have yet to figure out why free trade doesn't mean fair trade. And if you had said if a country had a 4% tariff on us and we put a 4% tariff on them, that's reciprocal. And I would have been like, all right, we're changing the dynamic. That's fine. We engaged tariffs based on trade deficits. We spend $10 billion there. They only spend $6 billion here. And I don't think that's a smart approach. So no, it doesn't have to be 0 and 0. It's my preferred to get them down to 0. If it had been reciprocal, that's one thing. These were not. And so that's my argument. Let's bring it back to the show. The White House press briefing continues. Caroline Levitt answering questions about tariffs and nothing but tariffs, and being very clear that every deal will be on a case-by-case basis, and no, there will be no delay. These tariffs are coming tomorrow, and you will love them. That's basically what she said. It's basically what she said. Tony Katz today, back to the White House press secretary.
Tailor-made approach to each and every country. And if that means discussions of foreign aid, of our military presence in these countries, how those troops are paid for, come to the table, that could be part of the negotiation in these economic negotiations. But it's the president's economic team who will be leading these. And these are tariff and trade negotiations.
I mean, we came back at the perfect time. What did we say? What did we say? What makes a deal? Trump wins, and a deal can always be made as long as it adheres to the first rule of Trumpism. What's the first rule of Trumpism? Trump wins. A deal is not all manufacturing. She just said that. A deal can be predicated on a great number of things. That's why we said from the beginning, the words don't mean a damn thing. What happens? What are the details? That's what matters.
Are they disappointed in Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett?
To your first question, I don't have any actions to read out in terms of Venezuela. The president has imposed secondary tariffs on the Maduro regime and on Venezuela in the form of oil, which is obviously going to have a crippling effect on the Maduro regime, and that's the intended effect of this administration. As for the justice you mentioned, as for the Supreme Court, we've made our feelings very clear. We believe this was a massive victory. Certainly, we wish this was a 9-0 decision because we firmly believe that the president was well within his constitutional authority. And the Supreme Court made that very clear last night, and they put Judge Boasberg in his place. We called on the Supreme Court to rein in these judges who are acting as judicial activists, not real arbiters of the truth and the law. And that's exactly what we saw the Supreme Court do yesterday. Christian.
Thanks, Caroline. Now that the president's
was a nice answer to not slapping Amy Coney Barrett around.
What's the status of the IRS? When will they actually start collecting revenue, and will that be nested under CBP or somewhere else entirely?
It's something Secretary Lutnick has taken up, so I defer you to the Department of Commerce, but it's something that he and the president believe quite strongly in, and it's a promise that they intend to keep to the American
people. Real quickly, can you explain why the president opted to send Secretary Hegseth to the dignified transfer last week instead of attending himself?
Sure. The Secretary Hegseth was there to represent the administration. The president has expressed his condolences to these families, as have I from this podium. Shelby. Thank you.
So what happened was Trump was down in Florida. You had these 4 soldiers who were killed in Lithuania returning to the United States. Pete Hegseth was there. Trump did not go. There's a little bit of hay being made out of this. And I am not saying that the hay is wrong, considering how Biden dealt with a dignified transfer where he's looking at his watch. Why he wasn't there, I don't know. And I also don't know to the extent that there are times where the president does not attend when soldiers who have been killed have been returned home. But there's a little bit of heat on this, a little bit of hay. I don't know if it's going to have legs or not, but I think it's a legit question as to why Trump wasn't there. I don't think that's the worst in the world. I'm Tony Katz. Sometimes it's going to be like, if Biden wasn't there, he'd be like, oh, sure, Biden doesn't show up for the troops. It's a standard rational question to be asked. Let me bring it back. And her answer was, let me get out of this question. That was her answer.
Stop Iran's funding of terrorist aggression worldwide that the previous administration wasn't doing.
Well, first of all, when it comes to Saturday, I won't get ahead of the president. He has said there will be direct talks with Iran on Saturday. I won't further any details from this podium for obvious reasons, security reasons.
Sorry, did she just say direct talks with Iran?
However, when it comes to Iran, the president has reimposed crippling sanctions on the Iranian regime, and he's made it very clear to Iran they have a choice to make. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences to pay.
By the way, that's no joke.
Thank you, Caroline. On the president's threat yesterday on social media to increase tariffs against China by an additional 50%,
I'll get to it in a couple minutes.
Retaliation. Has he signed anything in terms of an executive order, any documentation around that? Will that additional 50% go into effect tomorrow?
They will be going into effect at 12:01 a.m. tonight, so effectively tomorrow. Yes.
Did you work on that today?
Of course, as always. To the gentleman in front of you, because that's who I originally called on. Go ahead.
Over the weekend, President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly. And these are violent, repeat offenders in American streets.
And there's no argument that we want these people deported. It's amazing, writes Patricia, that the four justices did not come to agree with the Constitution and law. I'm with you. And this was part of the conversation with William Jacobson of Legal Insurrection, that Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Amy Coney Barrett didn't come to the only answer possible, which is the president of the United States can utilize the Alien Enemies Act. And that due process is indeed different for non-citizens, which is absolutely accurate. They aren't afforded all of the Constitution. They're just not. And as William Jacobson noted, the administration conceded that there is a base level, a minute level, dealing with making sure you don't make a mistake. We don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to make mistakes. But the idea that somehow we're going to somehow say that it's wrong to say that the president has the utilization of the Alien Enemies Act, and the president somehow can't do the job of engaging, enforcing the laws on immigration, which is his purview. I'm with you. Nutty stuff.
It's not quite yet ready for release. Sure. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you.
I was calling on the young lady behind
sorry.
you, but I'll come to you after, Ed.
All right.
Not discriminating here.
The president is meeting today with House Republicans. Can you say who is in that meeting and his message to Republicans that are skeptical of the Senate-passed budget framework?
Sure. The president will be meeting with Republican lawmakers today here at the White House to talk to them about the framework that the Senate passed. The president was very quick to put out a statement about his support for the reconciliation package that the Senate passed, and he is counting on House Republicans to pass it. The Republicans received an overwhelming mandate from the American public to govern. We have an extraordinary opportunity. There are key promises that the president made to the American people in this bill: tax cuts, securing the border, deregulation, unleashing the might of American energy. These are good things for the American people. The president wants to see this get done, and that's why he's engaging with lawmakers today.
He's engaging with Republicans, as Caroline Levitt explains it, based on the Senate legislation that has passed that the House is having trouble with, because the Freedom Caucus is saying there's not enough cuts here. There's just not enough here to work with. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. And I will admit, I make it a policy to cover as much of these briefings as possible. You should hear it. We should all hear it in the same way. Maybe we take it a little bit differently. So I think it's always good to be in that moment. There are a lot of new faces in the briefing room. The one thing that you could say about the Trump administration that they have done, they have lived up to their word. Man, are there new faces? People I have never seen before, outlets, everything else. It's super impressive. And it seems that I think there are some people there who are clearly from Trump-leaning outfits. But there's a lot. I mean, you can see other reporters hearing these new people, these younger people, and like, that's a good question. Oh, okay, I'd want to know that. You could almost see a sense of relief that everyone's, for the most part, asking a question that's engaged in the thing. It isn't a softball, but rather it's curiosity or pushback on a talking point, what have you. To the extent that I have some hope for the press corps, that's it. But earlier, Corinne, I keep saying it. She's going to kill me one day. Caroline Levitt said that Trump was going to be speaking with Iran. And I almost jumped out of my own skin. I was like, what? There was a conversation about indirect conversations taking place right through other parties and proxies. Axios with the story. President Trump, in a conversation yesterday, I missed this, said that the U.S. has been holding direct talks with Iran, and that a meeting involving very high-level officials will be taking place this Saturday. Now, Trump has said there has to be a new nuclear deal, right? We're done with this JCPOA nonsense, which was a terrible deal from the beginning. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal, it allowed Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Of course, that's what they're trying to do. And if it wasn't for Israel taking out reactors or engaging Stuxnet, well, then you would, Lord only knows what you would have. And anybody who thinks that a nuclear Iran is somehow okay is out of their head. The Ayatollah has to go, and the concept of the Ayatollah has to go. That's the only way you're going to have peace. It's the only way. According to the Iranian foreign minister, the talks will take place in Oman. They're going to be high level. I'm not quite sure what that means. Who is the high level from the United States? Is the Secretary of State going? Is it just going to be Trump envoy Steve Witkoff? Is that who's going? The question is this why Netanyahu was there yesterday? For a full briefing on what's going to happen and a full understanding of Israel's position. And so we're clear, Israel's position is as follows. Create any deal you want with them, Don. They bother us, we're going to kill these people. We've got ways to kill the Ayatollah that you haven't dreamt of yet, Don. So, for the sake of clarity, you do what you do. Maybe you can get them to leave us alone. Gosh, that would be terrific. But if they ain't going to leave us alone, we're going to end this. You might be unhappy. We'll live with that because at least we'll be alive. I assume that's the way part of the conversation went. Netanyahu stating, or I should say the quotes attributed to him, that Netanyahu wants the Libya model, meaning an end to the Iranian nuclear program altogether. They say, Iran says, we don't have a bomb. A bomb? What bomb? What are you talking about from bombs? We don't know any bombs unless you're talking about Ishtar. You see, they get their movies there about 40 years late, and that was with Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman. I'm pretty sure, Landon, you ever see the Ishtar? No, okay, it's all right. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the movie. It's terrible. One of the great bombs in cinematic history was Ishtar. So that's what they said was a bomb. They're very, very funny. But they're saying they won't shut down their nuclear program. Well, of course not. It's not about power, meaning nuclear power. It's about power as in being a nuclear power. You see the difference? I don't know what comes from some level of negotiation. I must admit that it seems I want to say a slight bit of a fool's errand. But if you understand Trump, this is so him. And what's the proof? First term North Korea. Trump going to North Korea. Trump stepping over the line, literally, and walking into North Korean territory. If that wasn't the explanation of this guy is different and has a different philosophy. And what is that philosophy? Everything that everybody's done hasn't worked. Could we try something else for once? Do we have to do it this way all the time? This way seems to suck. Nothing changes. It's always a problem. How about, wait, hold on. We'll try it this way. We'll try it this way and we'll see what happens. And maybe we'll learn that this way was worse or this way was better. Or maybe this way was the same and the problem is North Korea just sucks. Trying it differently is what the man does. As Caroline Levitt explained, he's always willing to pick up the phone. He's always willing to get on a phone call, have the conversation, and do the thing. Very, very curious as to what this is. The Iranians are saying that Khamenei is very, very clear. There will be no direct talks if the United States is going to keep up its maximum pressure campaign. If there's maximum pressure, then no. Well, I haven't heard anything about pressure somehow being relieved. So that is the latest there. I've got a little bit of Jasmine Crockett Masterpiece Theater, and it's possible that James Carville has contracted he may have contracted something. I have got that story coming up. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today. Yeah. Guys, welcome back. Tony Katz. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. Oh, I have got some. Do I have? No, I don't. So let me grab this right now while we're talking. I've got some Jasmine Crockett Masterpiece Theater. It's going to be so good. So good. And then, what I have for James Carville. Such a treat. So I only bring you the finest in radio joy. It's so, so, so very good. Where is this? That's going to go there. And I will set this up right here. So this is how I go through it. This is how I go through setting it up. So boom. I've got that right there. Do that. And we'll do this. Excuse me. And then we will do this right here. Come on. There it is. There it is right there. Oh, I've got some great Scott Jennings audio too. He's so good. Come on.
And if we don't stop it now, the scope will get bigger, and then it will happen to you, and then you'll have a problem with it.
I think also you're conflating legal American citizens with people who came here illegally. We do this all the time in these debates. And I think what the administration is trying to do is be as aggressive as possible at deporting different kinds of populations. One, people who've committed heinous, violent crimes. Number two, people that were violent before they came here. Number three, anyone who came here illegally. I mean, look, I'm sorry, but if you came here illegally, no matter how well-intentioned you were, there's probably a decent chance you're going to be sent back. And that's what the administration clearly communicated to the American people in the election. They overwhelmingly voted for it, and it's not particularly a controversial matter.
Let me just, before we go, I want to, because we were talking about American citizens and the dividing.
He's right. It's not controversial at all. At all. What's controversial about saying that people who broke the law shouldn't be in the country? Nothing controversial about it whatsoever. Truly nothing. So it's very possible that James Carville has syphilis. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. And before I get told, oh my gosh, Tony, defamation suit. Whoa, 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 whoa. It was James Carville who said that Trump had syphilis. Proof? No proof. He didn't need proof. He didn't care about proof. Proof is for suckers. He just went out there and made this absolutely awful claim. So I just learned that it's okay to make these kinds of claims. Tony Katz today. Good to be with you. He's talking into a camera. He looks like he's in a hotel room. And he's just disheveled with his LSU quarter zip and his hat. And he's like wiping his mouth and good Lord. And well, this is this is him being him.
Billions of dollars for access. Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know how this ends? Do you know these collaborators with the country is going to feel toward collaborators with this regime. Maybe you need to go in history and see what happened in August of 1944 after Paris was liberated. They didn't take very kindly to the collaborators. No. It was not a very pretty sight in the streets of Paris. I'm not saying that these people should be placed in pajamas and have their heads shaved, march down Pennsylvania Avenue, and spit out. I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay. You're not saying that. It's exactly what you're saying. You're comparing people who support Trump to Nazi collaborators, and you want them to be physically harmed. It's, of course, what you're saying. And to prove it, you said it again.
But I'm saying that did happen. And I'm saying that these people betrayed the French nation in the same way that I think that these law firms and these giant corporate conglomerates are betraying the United States. What their comeuppance is, I can only guess. I don't believe in any kind of, I don't believe it should assault anybody. Spitting on somebody is an assault. I warn you, I don't recommend doing that. I guess involuntarily shaving somebody's head is another assault. I mean, it's illegal. Don't do that. But
don't do that. But he is who he is. He is a guy who is committed to violence, as all of these leftists are committed to violence. Every single day of the week, they are always committed to violence. Always, always, always. Nothing has changed. This is who they are. And all James Carville is doing is giving voice to who these people are. It's not shocking nor surprising. It is standard operating procedure. And as for why he talks this way and why he acts this way, I don't know. That's why I thought it was syphilis. He thought Trump had it. Maybe he's got it. I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying he has it, but I assume if you had it, that's the way you would act. Is that not how this works? I could have sworn that's how this works right here. Let us now engage a little bit of Jasmine Crockett Masterpiece Theater. Welcome once again to Jasmine Crockett Masterpiece Theater, where we listen to the only the finest of what Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas has to say, and then we ask ourselves, what? Today, Representative Jasmine Crockett wants you to know that there is only one reason and one reason only to keep illegal immigrants coming into the country. Would you like to know what that reason is? Of course you do! Right here on Jasmine Crockett Masterpiece Theater. She actually said it. These are her words. I cannot make this up. Okay. And here we go.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation. I know that's right. So I had to go around the country.
Sorry, My microphone just went dead for a second. That was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett making the argument that the only reason to allow people into the country is to pick our food because we won't do it, and then equated it to picking cotton. She is the gift that keeps on giving. She is the gift that the ridiculousness of her arguments. This is the only reason for immigration, or this is a reason to continue illegal immigration. Oh, let her figure it out. But yes, let the Democrats keep putting Jasmine Crockett front and center. Another rousing edition of Jasmine Crockett Masterpiece Theater. This is Tony Katz Today. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. Good Lord. I only hope, Representative, that you are forever the face of that party. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Too bad the GOP is great on singers, but horrific on actual policy. That's Matt. That's not the worst thing ever said. It's not. It's not. I think a lot of people would go with that right there. Yeah, it's that was my 1-2 punch of the day. Normally that would just come in the audio dump on Friday, but it was just too good. It was too good, and there was too much, and had to be a part. I had to share it with you right there. I'm sorry I couldn't get the music to play in the stream. It just wasn't uploading to the stream, and I don't know why that is. I do know that April 17th, we have got the event, Trump and American Reset in 3 bourbons. Get your tickets, tickets.tonykatz.com. Tickets.tonykatz.com. The Bourbon Heaven Hill. Oh, my bourbon selections are out of control. Perfect stuff. I could not be more pleased. Cigars came in yesterday. It's like, I kid you not. I could a tear down my face. The food, which is from a local barbecue place, a fantastic place called Big Hoffa's Barbecue, where they were very helpful. Adam Hoffman was very helpful in the writing of the book Let's Go Barbecue that I wrote, which is available at Amazon.com. Let's Go BBQ, recipes, tips, and tales from the pit. And you can get that there. And so he's got the food. And I mean, I am working overtime on getting so much of this late breaking stuff into the first 100 days conversation. And really like the entomology, like where did first 100 days come from, and what we seen from other presidents and recent, and then, taking a look at, like, let's say FDR, and really some things are uncomparable. Like, how do you compare Washington's first 100 days to Trump's? How do you compare Lincoln's? These were such massive different levels of moments in history, but the FDR stuff we're still dealing with today. And when you take a look at Obama and Biden's first 100 days, the parallels are ugly. And of course, there's a reason for that, which I'll be discussing on Thursday, April 17th, Trump and American Reset in 3 bourbons, a review of the first 100 days. Tickets.tonykatz.com, tickets.tonykatz.com. And always, that is the Einheits. Comes in a series of colors right there. Automatic. It's got a display back. Can I show the display? Let me see if I can. I don't know if you can see that or not. I don't know if I can get it there. There it is. Display back. Can I? No? Yes? No? Yeah, it's there. You got to trust me on that. Beautiful, beautiful piece right here. And you can go to Von Riest and get your watch assembled in the USA right here in Indiana. And you can go to Von Riest, R-I-E-S-T-E, vonriest.com and get yours a series, right? This is the Einheit, the Hanoverian. They've got the Munchner, which is a small seconds mechanical, which is just wonderful for the watch purist. And then, of course, the line of chronographs that are coming out. And unbelievable. Thrilled to be working with them and hope for a good long time to come. Appreciate you guys being here. I want to see if there was something I did want to go over. One question. I want to see if I can find it. Maybe I can't. I can't. I thought I had found it. But I'll get it at another time. I appreciate you guys being here. There's more radio to get to. You can go to WIBC.com and listen to that. I will be back tomorrow. Appreciate you guys being here so very much. And don't forget to like and follow and do all the things that I guess get done. All right. Catch you tomorrow. Take care.